a certain degree, because it's pretty hard when you're raised in that lifestyle to really separate it in some ways. But I always really enjoyed being around the farm, and I love being around the equipment, and I like the fact that you were never doing the same thing like day after day. It was always a little bit different. I've always been quite happy with what I chose to do, I guess. We were a relatively small farm compared to, a lot of other farms, especially when you get into Southern Ontario, but it doesn't matter if you got a small or a large farm, there's always that whole management aspect of it. And every farm's a little bit different. So my position, I guess, is I look after the books, and I do whatever field work is required. If it means that I have to help fix machinery, or if I have to help maintain machinery, or run for parts or whatever, that's kind of where, like, I just do everything, I guess. Seed grain production versus just cash crop production. Basically, you're doing the same thing. You're growing the crop. You're making sure that you're putting whatever inputs it requires. You're managing it for weeds and for bugs and for, different diseases. When it comes to the seed grain part of it, it just requires a bit more management. One is that the crop has to be walked. It has to be inspected to make sure that there's no other crop types in there. There's no noxious weeds. There's the variety that you're growing is true to its type. And that has to happen before it's harvested. And then when harvest comes, everything has to be cleaned. You have to clean your combines, your bins, your wagons, your whatever piece of machinery you're using to take that particular crop off. It has to be cleaned very well, because you cannot have any contamination of any sort of any other variety of anything. And then it has to be kept separate, even if it's a variety of soybeans that you already grow as a cash crop. You cannot mix the two together. So that in itself kind of presents a challenge sometimes, because quite often when you're keeping seed, you don't have an entire bin full of seeds. So it takes up space that you can't use for something else. So that part of it requires more management. Everything's got to be kept track of, obviously what your yield, even when you take it to the cleaner, it's got to be marked down, how much was taken out for cleanings, where did it go, how much was sold, and then there's royalties that need to be paid to the actual breeder of that particular variety. So there's a little bit more management to that part. We have farms in different locations, and so our soil runs from sort of heavy clay to sandy loam. So obviously you're going to manage those two different types of soil in a different way. When my dad first moved to the home farm, it had grown dehydrated alfalfa for years, and it was very heavily compacted. And not that it wouldn't grow things, but it wasn't being as productive as what it should have been. So over the years, he has, reduced tillage. He has minimized the number of trips that you go over the field in terms of trying to do a couple things together. One of the things that we've done is over the last couple of years is we've implemented strip tilling for growing our corn and our beans, especially our corn. Basically, it just tills the 12-inch strip where you're going to plant your corn, and then it doesn't till the 30 inches in between. And you're putting fertilizer down in the ground where the plant needs it. So you're not disturbing the soil, you're not compacting the soil the same. As well, you are putting the fertilizer where it's needed instead of spreading it all over the field. So therefore you can use less fertilizer, which again is good for the soil health, because you're putting it exactly where you need it. And it also helps if you've got any areas of topography where there might be some low-lying areas or some hills. Maybe you've got an area where it gets more wind, so it helps with erosion and water runoff and those kinds of things. The other thing that we've done over the years is we've always, because we don't have animals, we don't have manure to put back onto the fields, we've always left residue. So if we combine our wheat or our barley, we don't necessarily bale the straw. We chop it up and we spread it back out on the field. And we've noticed a huge difference in the actual tilth, I guess you would call it, of the soil. It's a lot looser. We leave something for the worms and the microorganisms and microbes to chew on, and we feel that our soil is a little healthier that way. And it means that we don't necessarily have to use all those pieces of large tillage equipment to get things broken up in the spring. We can generally go in and use maybe something more minimum because it's nice and loose. I think the biggest lesson, always remain flexible and always be willing to learn. And it's okay to make mistakes because we all make mistakes. I think the biggest thing is to learn from those mistakes and never really think that you have to be exactly like the neighbors. Always be willing to experiment, like we have with strip tilling. We've had lots of neighbors say, oh, that's not going to work. That just is a terrible idea. For us, we feel it's working. And it's something I think that's probably going to take off, especially as we see this year, especially with crop input prices being, doubled, tripled. Those are types of things that we're really going to have to, I think, watch in the future. And so I think that's the biggest lesson is you just have to be always willing to learn and be able to just think outside the box. There's a couple things. I think I would suggest that they go work for a couple different people. If they've been raised on a farm, there's always a different way of going about things. There's always different perspectives. I think it gives people a chance to see how other people do things. And maybe you'll come away and say, oh, I don't want to do it like that, or I like the way I was doing it, or you might come up with a new idea. I also think it's really important that if you have the opportunity to further your education, whether it be college or university, or even just extension courses, just always be willing to take in some advice from other people, and again, be willing to learn. Just life is a lifelong learning process. It has made me a very independent person. I've got a chance to, wear so many hats for one thing. I think it's been given me a very, very broad life experience. I consider myself kind of well-rounded, that I'm able to, keep books, help manage a farm. I'm able to run equipment. I'm able to help maintain equipment. But the other thing that I think kind of sets it a little bit apart is when my kids were young, I was able to have them with me. I was able to allow them to have the same sort of upbringing that I had. They've had to learn the same things, that not everything goes the way that you want it to go. Every day you face challenges, and it's how you step up to those challenges. And I think that's kind of helped them through a lot of things in life. I guess I just feel really fortunate. I feel very fortunate to be in the industry that I'm in, and I feel very satisfied. I don't have any regrets so far about anything. So I'm just really thankful that I have this ability, this opportunity to be a part of the whole food cycle.